He was discharged from hospital in late March and delegated many of his duties while recovering, including the traditional Easter Mass, although he did appear in public. His death was announced this morning by Cardinal Kevin Farrell, the Vatican Camerlengo, who said, "At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the Father's house. His entire life was dedicated to serving God and His Church." He added, "He taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage and universal love, especially for the poorest and most disadvantaged. With infinite gratitude for his example as a true disciple of Jesus, we entrust the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite and merciful love of the one and only Lord God." Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected the 266th Pope of the Catholic Church in 2013 after Pope Benedict XVI unexpectedly resigned from his papacy. Pope Francis, as he has been called, is the first Latin American and the first Jesuit to lead the Roman Catholic Church. Elected to reform the Vatican's administrative and financial system, he is known as a relatively liberal priest compared to his predecessors, telling reporters last year, "Homosexuality is not a crime." The Pope met briefly with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday, during which the two exchanged Easter greetings. The meeting, which was said to have lasted a few minutes, was preceded by criticism of the U.S. administration, condemnation of migration policies and pledges. The Pope appeared before crowds at the traditional Easter Mass yesterday, sitting on the balcony loggia above the entrance to St. Peter's Basilica, and waved as he said from his wheelchair, "Dear brothers and sisters, Happy Easter." In a speech to the crowd read by an aide, the Pope accused some countries of inciting contempt for migrants and the most vulnerable in society. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was among the first to express her condolences, describing the Pope as an inspiration to millions. He inspired millions of people, not just the Catholic Church, with his humility and his pure love for those less fortunate, she said. May they find comfort in the idea that Pope Francis' legacy will continue to guide us all towards a more just, peaceful and compassionate world. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance expressed his grief less than 24 hours after meeting the Pope briefly. "I have just learned of the death of Pope Francis," he said. "My condolences to the millions of Christians around the world who loved him. It was a pleasure to see him yesterday, although he was obviously very ill. But I will always remember him for this homily he gave in the early days of the COVID pandemic. It was absolutely beautiful." Nigel Farage was one of the first British politicians to react to Pope Francis' death. "My condolences to everyone in the Catholic Church following the death of Pope Francis," he told X. "I met him and I liked him very much." Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch said his death on Easter Monday leaves us all feeling particularly sad. She said, "Pope Francis spent his last Easter yesterday bearing witness to the faith to which he dedicated his life, a quiet presence at a time when the world needed humility, courage and faith. His death on Easter Monday left us feeling particularly heartbroken. He reminded us that leadership is not about power, but about service. When I met him in 2022, he spoke passionately about the UK and the values we share. In a world that has often turned its back on faith, he remained steadfast. May he rest in peace." According to Catholic tradition, Pope Francis must be buried between 4 and 6 days after his death, while the official mourning period is 9 days. The period between the death of a pope and the election of a new pope is known as the sede vacante. Between 15 and 20 days after a pope dies, cardinals under the age of 80 will travel to the Vatican to begin the papal conclave, a secretive electoral process held to determine a successor. The cardinals must vote in secret until a candidate receives a 2/3 majority. When a pope is elected, the Dean of Cardinals asks him if he accepts his election, and he is instructed to choose a name. The conclave ends when the new pope dissolves, traditionally after addressing the entire cardinalate.